Let's have your perspective on that. Again, like what went in the undergraduate, how did you go with the masters and then getting a job?
And so the more you talk to people inside the company, the more you share your resume throughout the company, the easier it is to get those referrals.
You got admitted in like 10 plus universities, like the top ones, the NYC and everything. So what was your strategy?
You're not doing any passive learning, it's all active learning. So the professor can call you at any point and be like, tell me what you learned about this mechanism in this disease and how it impacts patients and what treatments are. So you're fully just put on the spot.
You went to Imperial College London. Like, how was your decision process?
One misconception I had is I genuinely thought that you need a very specific profile to get into an Ivy League college.
If you could recall like a few pointers which you should mention while writing the essays or the statement of purpose, that would be handy.
I think my advice to anyone that's coming into college who's like very young, doesn't know much about the job search, obviously you have to hit apply on that job search, but
I saw your reel, one of your reel, as I mentioned, with I think it was LinkedIn. No, it was like the consultation one. And then I saw like your profile and you were like doing resume reviews and everything. And then I saw this Hire Me app. And I was like, okay, let's try it out. Like, why not? And then I went on, changed my current LinkedIn, whatever is there, like the about section or the work section. It's all, generated by the app itself. And I loved it so much. Like I just copy pasted and then I was like, okay, let's DM and maybe I like we can have a podcast because the whole idea of this show is about people who have moved from different countries. Like you went from London Imperial College to US for your masters. So I was like, okay, let's have your perspective on that. Again, like what went in the undergraduate, how did you go with the masters and then getting a job? Because it's very difficult. Like I came in Ireland in 2022 and it took me like 6-7 months to land a job, full-time gig. And then for yourself, like it was 3 months. I was like, okay, let's have a conversation. So that's the whole idea. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea and that's what you can expect throughout this whole conversation. And the agenda here is to like someone who is maybe 21, 20 year old who is like, planning to maybe do their masters or undergraduate from UK or US or Australia. Just give them a gist and a reality check, like what they can expect in terms of job market. Because on Instagram it seems fine, like we post stories of great backgrounds, lunch and everything, but the reality is not always that, right? So that's the whole idea of this podcast. And yeah, welcome and thanks for accepting the invite for this.
yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that introduction also. And thank you so much for sharing that story about Hire Me. That's actually great to hear because yeah, we genuinely built this LinkedIn product because we ourselves struggled with optimizing our LinkedIn profile and doing all of that manually. So I'm really glad that it was helpful. And yeah, I think you nailed that introduction perfectly. So I grew up in Belgium, but I'm originally Indian. And then I moved to London for my undergrad for Imperial College. And then immediately after, I moved to Cornell Medicine for my master's in health informatics. And exactly like you said, it took me 3 months to find a job. But I will say that there's another aspect of that I have shared in some of my videos, but I think it's also really interesting and just a learning lesson. And we can just like learn from each other's mistakes. So actually, my first 2 months of job searching, I just hit cold apply everywhere. I didn't actually network with anyone, or maybe I networked with one or two people, but nothing really solid. I just cold applied and I was hoping to hear back for interviews because honestly, at that point, I didn't know any better. I thought that that's the most effective way to job search. And I think that's so common, like you said, for a lot of people coming in for their undergrad who are 20, 21 year olds, because I mean, that seems like the most logical thing to do, right? Just
Right.
hit apply on that button. I think my advice to anyone that's coming into college who's like very young, doesn't know much about the job search. Obviously, you have to hit apply on that job search, but what matters the most is what you do after hitting apply, whether you're networking with the right people, whether you're actually chatting with people inside the company and you're really learning more about the company, you're really expressing your interest in the company to them. And then also, in the US and also in the UK, how it works is a lot of the big companies, also some of the small companies, they work through referrals. And so the more you talk to people inside the company, the more you share your resume throughout the company, the easier it is to get those referrals. And a referral is essentially, for anyone that doesn't know what it is, it's essentially someone vouching for you at the company. So let's say a recruiter is going through thousands of resumes. your resume will stand out if you get a referral. So it basically just puts you on top of the pile because someone at the company is an insider and is vouching for you. And so I think those are very helpful, especially when you're applying to very competitive roles where recruiters are going through hundreds of resumes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think overall, just to sum it up, I think my one advice to anyone that's in undergrad right now is obviously the job search is so overwhelming. We both have been through it,
Right.
finding months to get one job. It's very overwhelming. It's very daunting. And so essentially the main thing that I would advise is networking. Really try to talk to as many people as you can, talk to as many hiring managers you can. And I think networking in itself is a
Mm-hmm.
scary word, especially when you're just starting out. And
Right.
so for me, my first 2 to 3 chats with people, they were so awkward. I was so shy. I don't think I was asking the right questions. But I think the more you do it, the more you get used to it and the easier it becomes. And then you just realize that it's not only a way for you to get to know what the company does, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also a way for them to get to know you and your background and what your interests are. And most of the people I actually spoke to were very, very nice.
Yeah.
They were very willing to refer and just super excited about the work that they're doing. And I think that was very interesting.
Okay, got it. So, like, I will, I mean, ask you specific questions about the referral, like what is the strategy, then networking, how to get a coffee chat and everything. But before that, I
Yeah.
just wanted to know, like, you went to Imperial College London, like, how was your decision process? Because even I was thinking for doing an undergraduate in from a US based university or UK based university, but I didn't move ahead with the application. So, how did you decide on that, and then how was your experience over there?
For sure. Yeah. So for me, very similar to you, I applied to a bunch of US colleges and I applied to a lot of UK colleges as well. I applied to ones in New York, Boston, West Coast, USC, UCLA,
Mhm.
EU, Northeastern, NYU, and then I applied to Imperial, UCL, King's, and two other colleges in London. And so my decision process with Imperial was as soon as I got the offer, I went through Imperial's program and just like a quick Google search just even showed me how rigorous Imperial was and what its academic program was like. And also specifically my program was biomedical sciences
Right.
and it's a pretty new program. And so I really enjoyed how academically rigorous Imperial sounded like on the internet. And I
Mhm.
knew I wanted something challenging for college. Just overall speaking, between the UK and US, I ultimately chose UK, I would say because of Imperial itself. I
Okay.
think Imperial puts there's so much, the professors are so well renowned. It's doing truly cutting edge research. The classes are super tiny versus in the US, I felt like the colleges that I applied to, I felt like there was a big, like there would be one professor and there would be maybe 50 students and it would be a
Mhm.
very lecture style of teaching. One thing that stood out to Imperial to me was the teaching and how professors teach in those classes because it's not traditional lectures. In biomedical sciences, we had maybe classes of 10 to 15 people and it would be a cold ask class where basically you
Mhm.
have to read chapters beforehand the class and then during the class you're not doing any passive learning, it's all active learning. So the professor can
Yeah.
call you at any point and be like, tell me what you learned about this mechanism in this disease and how it impacts patients and what treatments are. So you're fully just put on the spot. And so if you haven't learned the prerequisites to the class, then I mean, you would basically be embarrassing yourself,
Right.
which I don't think any of us wanted to. And it really put me on edge, especially if you have, like, you're nervous talking in front of people, like it just gets a bit scary. But I think I appreciate that so much right now because it truly taught me it truly, I think, set me up for the rest of my career, hopefully. Because again, like how intense, but in the best way, how there was no passive learning
Yeah.
unless you're like learning individually and just learning all the prerequisites and how interactive the professor and students were is something that stood out to me. And overall, just I knew I wanted to be in London. Imperial College is in South Kensington, so it was right next to the Natural History Museum. And it was just an amazing college, super small college, which I really liked. And obviously with the brightest and smartest people around you. So I think for me, it was just a no-brainer to choose Imperial versus my US colleges.
Like, what was the difference or your experience like studying in Imperial? So it was, I think, what I can understand is like the bright mind people and the learning experience overall, and personalized attention, because the strength of the classroom was way smaller compared to the other any other universities in US or the colleges which you are looking for. sorry, to add on that, I would, I mean, agree to that, because when I come, like, I did computer science undergraduate from India, and it was like computer science is kind of like a practical subject. So you should be, doing the coding on the laptop. Whereas some, like most of our subjects were like theory based, where you have to write an exam for maybe coding or DSA problems or something like that, which was so weird. But moving to Ireland or moving to any other, like talking to people like yourself and other friends, I got to realize like this is the overall trend where, people are like, all the universities are focusing more on the practical approach rather than just coming there, showing the slides and then taking exams. I don't think so exams were a thing even like in these universities. It's just like assignments, and you have to be on your toes whole year long. You can't just, prepare for the end semester exam and that's it. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and I'd love to know your experience also. So you did your CS in India,
Mhm.
and then what made you move to Ireland? Why did you choose Ireland? Did you move there for a job or did you move there for your master's?
Okay, I'm on the podcast as well. So, well, actually, since growing up, I had this thought of, moving to US. As I said, like I was planning to do my undergraduate from US, but then due to the expenses and then all the entrance exam, like the STEM course, or there was one exam which you had to take, which I didn't, which I missed the deadline actually. So I was like, I don't want to waste a year. So maybe I'll prepare for the entrance exam for Indian colleges like CET or the local one. And then I did that. So but then still that was still in my mind that I have to move abroad, either US or Australia or UK. But then once I graduated, then I was looking at the fee structure. So for the US universities it was way expensive, and then me being a 19-20 year old researching about all these things, I had no clue, like maybe I could look for scholarship, maybe I could look for funding, and all those things. I didn't, like that even didn't even cross my mind. I was so like, I want to go, I'm so desperate and all that. So I was like, okay, let's choose Ireland because they have 1 year program for masters, first of all. And the second thing is it's an English speaking country, because like if you go to Germany or Spain or somewhere, then to get day to day things done, like maybe people prefer local language, like you connect to people more if you know the local language, and English being the local language here. So it was like, okay, this is the best location. And then I have few friends in UK. They were like, for tech
Hmm.
right now the scene is not great, so maybe Ireland would be the best choice. And that's how I came here for my business analysis masters. Back then I was running a agency which was like website development agency. So I was like, okay, if I move abroad then it's a plus, because then I get to know the perspective of the whole world, how things operate, how businesses work, how companies are built. And yeah, I mean, that's it.
Wow, that's very cool. And so did you start this podcast just as a side hustle?
Yeah, so in last year 2020, I was like, okay, you know what, there was no one to guide me, maybe I can be someone to guide the other people. And that's when this podcast and the whole YouTube channel started. So the YouTube channel is more directed towards moving to Ireland, and here and there, like the research about choosing the right country, course, everything. But the podcast is more directed towards, because I came in Ireland, so I know ins and outs about Ireland, but I don't know about UK or US or Australia. So it's like bringing people in who have moved to different locations with a different background, like biomedical science or like yourself. So just, talking to them, and then maybe from this conversation, someone who is planning to do the same thing might connect with you, or gain some insights and then be more confident in their decision making. Because this whole journey of moving to a new city or nation is like very lonely, very scary, and like full of uncertainties. So yeah, that's just it.
Wow, that's very cool. I think that's so noble of you to help other people in their job
Thank you.
search. No, genuinely, I think that's
Thank you.
really cool. And yeah, if I haven't said already, thank you so much for hosting me on this podcast. I think it's a really cool concept, and I went through your YouTube channels, and I think the
Mhm.
videos are genuinely very, very helpful for
Thank you
anyone
so much.
who's like looking to move abroad. Exactly like you said, especially if you're alone, it's very scary. Or like if you don't have siblings or a family in the city, it's very scary moving to another
Correct.
city. I was lucky that when I moved to New York, my older sister lived here
Mhm.
and I had a couple of childhood friends here. And yeah, so I think I just got lucky in the sense that the move wasn't too daunting or overwhelming for me because luckily I had an older sibling to kind of help me set up everything here.
Yeah, makes sense. But still, I mean, having someone, but still, it's like moving from your comfort zone to another comfort zone. So that's again still challenging.
Definitely.
So kudos on that. So I'll just touch base upon the master's thing. Like you mentioned, you got admitted in like 10 plus universities, like the top ones, the NYC and everything. So what was your strategy? Because a lot of people are not able to, at least even get the admit letter from those universities for their masters.
Yeah, for sure. Just gonna preface this that my master's was in, it was all related to the healthcare slash biotech industry slash informatics industry, not too much like data analysis, but more health informatics industry. So I applied to Imperial for my master's. I applied to UCL for my master's, and those are the only two colleges that I applied to in the UK because I honestly wanted to learn more about the US healthcare system. And something that I realized also just through talking to my friends was that the US salary is a lot higher than the UK salary. And so I really wanted to maybe learn more about the US healthcare system works, how salaries work there, and also just be exposed to a different kind of environment because I had been in London for 3 years. And so I applied to a bunch of US colleges. So I applied to Dartmouth, NYU. I didn't apply to Columbia because I needed a GRE. And then I applied to Cornell very, very last minute because I thought that not having enough work experience wouldn't lead me to a good enough master's program, but that was completely incorrect, I would say. So anyone looking to get into their master's program, you don't necessarily need a certain number of work experiences to enter, unless obviously you're doing an MBA, which is a
Mm-hmm.
prerequisite. And so that's one misconception that I think was very useful for me. So yeah, I applied to a bunch of US colleges. My strategy for my master's programs was really just personalizing every single application that I was writing. It's very easy to just have a template and kind of just change a few words and then submit it to that college. But I will say that really take the time to thoroughly research what every college has to offer, who their professors are, what previous alumni have said about the program, what their employment rate is after, what kind of classes you will be taking. Almost all master's programs, especially in sciences, have a capstone project. So
Right.
what opportunities will you get in that capstone project? All of that is so important when you're even choosing your master's programs. And
Mm-hmm.
then obviously other personal things like what city do you want to live in? If you lived in a campus college for your undergrad, do you want to do the same thing or move to a big city?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. For me, I've always loved living in a big city. So for me, New York City was almost like a no-brainer. And I've been wanting to live here since I was 12 years old. So I was really manifesting living in New York. I also, yeah, just to go back on my point about one misconception I had is I genuinely thought that you need a very specific profile for to get into an Ivy League college. Like, for example, I'd heard that you need this specific GPA, you need this amount of extracurriculars, you need this amount of publications. But honestly, every application is different. Even if you don't have that really high GPA, but you have amazing extracurriculars, you've done some amazing work in your college, still apply to those Ivy Leagues. It's so worth it. I didn't realize how much I should have applied until I actually spoke to one of my family members, and they're like, you should just submit your application. So mine was very last minute. So definitely apply, even if you're thinking about it, because you never know where it might lead you. So I got into NYU, Dartmouth, Cornell, USC, Boston University, Northeastern University, just to name those colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I was choosing between Cornell and Dartmouth because both programs are very rigorous. Cornell was health informatics and Dartmouth was biostatistics or bioinformatics, something similar to that. And ultimately, I chose Cornell because Cornell Med School is in New York City. I really wanted to be in the city. I also really like Cornell because it is still affiliated with Memorial Sloan Kettering
Mm-hmm.
and New York Presbyterian, which are two really renowned institutions in the healthcare industry. So having very easy access and direct access to those people working there in terms of job opportunities also was so useful for me. And another reason I chose Cornell's program was also because, again, the program was very tiny. My program had 30 students.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just imagine the amount of detail and focus each student gets and how professors are really listening to their needs. Also, all the professors at Cornell were either ex-doctors or current doctors who worked in the US. So that's another thing that just sheds so many insights. So if you're interested in any part of the healthcare industry, there will be someone there to help you. Not saying that Dartmouth doesn't have that. It was just my personal preference to choose Cornell.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And what I think your competitive or your unique selling point was because you did your undergraduate in the similar field. like biomedical, that maybe added more to your application, like that made your application more stronger, is what I feel. But I mean, this would be completely opposite because you said there is no set template for that. But if you could recall like few pointers which you should mention while writing the essays or the statement of purpose, that would be handy.
Yes, definitely. So I wrote about 12 essays. So I feel like I got a pretty good hand of it at the end. I was like, I think I know what I want to write. So yeah, I would say the first step that you should probably do is thoroughly research the university, see what it has
Mm-hmm.
to offer, see the classes you would be taking, see
Mm-hmm.
what previous alumni have said. When you look through the classes, see who the professors are, and then look them up separately. And especially if you do a research oriented master's program, see the research that they're doing and just take notes of that. Like just
Mm-hmm.
maybe highlight it or take notes of that throughout because you want to mention all of this in your essay. So the way I structured my essay is I first started with like a personal anecdote about why I'm interested in this field, what led
Mm-hmm.
my interest. Um, because I will say that I was 21 that I applied, so I didn't have a ton of work experience. It
Mm-hmm.
more just like internship slash something that I was interested in, something that I built on the side. But a lot of people in the master's programs tend to be a bit older and do have a couple of years of work experience under their belt. So it's quite easy to come up with that personal anecdote of why
Mm-hmm.
you're in that industry. And then I moved on to why this personal story of me makes me want to study that specific program in that specific college. So I started off with like, why health informatics, for example? What classes am I interested in? Why am I interested in those classes? And one thing I think that will make you stand out is actually explaining what you will contribute to the program. Because obviously you're entering that program, right? So how will you maybe contribute to the research? How has your work experience previously slash internship slash research experience previously, how is that going to help the college? Is there alignment there? Could you help professors with any work that they're doing? What are you most excited about in the classes that you're going to be taking? And then mentioning all of those specifics in the program is important. And then what's equally as important is also mentioning why that specific college, because a lot of master's programs have the same, a lot of master's colleges have the same programs. So why do you want to pick that specific college? And it's also just a pointer for you to realize what is unique about that college, you know? So for me, Cornell, for example, I mentioned the affiliation with those two institutions. I also mentioned the very, very specific classes I will be taking. And then also another really useful thing is you can honestly go on LinkedIn and you can just connect with people that did that master's program. And
Okay.
so you can talk to them, ask them about their insights, about what they felt about the program. Because which I hope you do, that if you do get an
Yeah.
interview at the master's program, you can actually quote some quotations from these students and you can be like, this really stood out to me when this person was talking about this class. And then that just shows your proactiveness and how eager you are to join the program.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then I think the last paragraph in your essay should just summarize everything you've said throughout the essay and just end it with like maybe your short-term slash long-term career goals, if you know that, and how this master's program would kind of be a stepping stone towards those career goals that you have.
Okay. Okay, that's, I mean, I think that's a solid application. Like, what else the college need? They just need that, okay, the person who is joining the university is willing to put in the efforts, and because even they have to maintain their, it's kind of, so like, if you are doing well, it's kind of, oh, this person is an alumni of Cornell University, of this particular so and so university. So if you are proving your point that, okay, I am willing to put in the efforts and everything, so I think, okay, makes sense. Even if you don't have the experience, I mean, that you are one of the examples, right? You got into Ivy League for your masters without like set example experience, without a huge
Hmm.
work experience. It was like maybe internships here and there, but I would say, is it fair to say, like, as a fresher?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So like, you got into the master's program in the Ivy League as a fresher, is it fair to say that, because it was just internship opportunities which you got, right? So.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. It was just a couple of internship experiences, nothing crazy, no big
Mm-hmm.
names on my resume. One thing I think that I will say that really, really helped me was Imperial. I was very lucky at Imperial that they connected me with an internship at the UK Dementia Research and Health Institute, which is UK's leading dementia institution. And so team that I worked with over there were all PhD students, and so they were working on publications, and they actually asked me to join on one. And so that was one thing that really, I think, helped me stand out because having a publication as an undergrad and being first or second author on that is something that's very valuable. And then ultimately got approved, and it got approved in the Journal of Medical Internet Research, which was very helpful. And when I was submitting the application, all I said was, oh, it's just currently being sent for publication because it hadn't been approved yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even if you're an undergrad student, take time and actually see if there's anything that anyone's doing around you that you can join in on that you're interested in. I've always been interested in neurodegenerative diseases, so Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia
Uh,
patients. Yeah, I've always been interested in Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia patients. And I've just always been interested in those diseases because they don't have treatments. And so I knew that I wanted to get involved in that. And I think my proactiveness in these internships stood out a lot that they actually offered me to get in on a publication. So if there's anything that interests you, you can either ask, like that's completely fine, asking your professors if you can join in on any research that they're doing, or if you have maybe older friends in the same program as you can definitely ask them as well.
okay.
And it never hurts to ask, I think.
Yeah. Makes sense. And I think in the biomedical space, with the advancement in technology, like with the AI and the generative models, like I was chatting with a friend, he's doing biomedical and science, like it's kind of like the bridge between the biomedical stuff like genes and everything and then the tech. So it's a combination of that. So I was talking to him and he's like, bro, you don't even know. Okay, like we are talking about chat gpt generative models. It's just, taking your whatever you're speaking, taking that instruction and giving out the answers. But for if you think in terms of diseases, let's say you find a pattern in your genes, then you can generate a genome and then do some modification or something like that. Even there, the application, this whole generative model is like insane. I think you can, I mean, comment on that as well. But I think anyone who is planning to do biomedical with a blend of tech, I think it's biotech kind of, so would have a competitive edge and would be relevant in market for like maybe a decade from now, is what I feel.
Definitely, yeah. I fully agree with that. I think also with the rise of AI in medicine, I think if you're interested in any sort of technical side of
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, whether that's looking at like prosthetics, whether that's looking at robotics, whether that's looking at like I in one of my internships actually which led me to really learn about AI in medicine, we were looking at how wearable devices slash depth cameras can actually be a
Mm-hmm.
potential biomarker for Parkinson's and dementia patients. And then if you're working on the tech side of healthcare, you're truly working on something that's so cutting edge and so novel. And it's just so exciting to work on something like that because we were working on something that no one had ever worked on before in the world, which in itself sounded so cool. And I think also everyone talks about upskilling. I think if you're genuinely in a program like AI in healthcare, slash health informatics, you're learning such new things, that you're learning about how we can regulate all of this around us that's going on in the world. Like every day
Mm-hmm.
there's something new that's coming out in healthcare. How is that actually being regulated? And being part of those discussions just sheds so many insights on the healthcare industry. And it's definitely very, very, it stands out a lot to job recruiters also because companies, you having that program, you have so much knowledge and skills about what's going on that I think it stands out to recruiters also because, yeah, I mean, essentially you're just upskilling and learning about new concepts in that entire program. So, yeah, definitely health technology is a field that I was very interested in because of that internship, which led me to do health informatics. And I think long term also, I would love to do something, maybe a strategy role in a smaller health tech company.
Okay.
And also with the rise of wearable devices, if you're interested in that, definitely just go for it.
Yeah. Oh, I by the way, I just ordered Whoop, so let's see how it goes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. There's a free thing going on, right? Like
Yeah,
there's,
it's 1 month free trial. Like you can try for yourself, and then if you want, you can just keep it or just send it back.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. See, I think what sold me for Whoop was it has no screen and it tracks everything and it's like very lightweight. So it will be shipping here like on Monday, I guess, and I'll use it for a week and see. Sorry, for a month and see. because recently I've been starting getting into athletics and like running and marathons and everything. So I was like, okay, I need something which can give me a score which shows that okay, I am ready to push more, or I need to rest or sit back, something like that, you know. So that's all. And the whole USP of Whoop, other like compared to other variables, is it gives you the readiness score, which is exactly what I was looking for. So I was like, okay. But anyways, I'll let you know how it works for a month, after a month.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Love to know.
Yeah. So I think that's, I mean, that's your journey. So let's dive into the job hunting side of things, you know, like getting full time. So I can divide this whole process into like 4 steps. First is fix your resume. Second would be your LinkedIn profile, because that's your second resume. Third is networking, sending cold DMs, sending cold outreach. And fourth would be like preparing for your interviews, or just getting ready with the questions and the common questions, and this having your answers prepared already, like before entering the interview room, is a plus, because it just like you're like, oh, I know the answer for that, and that confidence just reflects, and you're not nervous and all that. So we'll start with the resume, how to build one. And if okay, first let's start with how to build one, like a good resume. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed those 4 steps exactly. I would say the same exact thing, definitely. That's a very, I think, clear and crucial breakdown that I think any job seeker should have. So yeah, starting with the first one, fixing or I guess drafting your resume if you're an early
Mm-hmm.
career student. There's a lot of templates out there, resume templates. Some are good, some are not so good. So definitely have a thorough search of maybe look through 5 to 6 and see which one stands out. And I think the points that we're about to mention will help you choose that decision. And so you want to look through, let's say you're interested in investment banking, then you want to look through investment banking resume templates, and you can essentially use that template as a starting point. And you want to have your education at the top. So then, sorry, starting at the top. So you would have your name slash
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn profile slash phone number and your address. And then right below that, it would be the education section where you can talk about any like your high school slash the university that you're currently at. I think if you have a strong GPA, maybe above 3, if you're in the US, maybe above 3.5, then you can include your GPA. If you're in the UK, if you have a second class, upper second class, first class, definitely include that also. One important thing is, I think this is also really useful, but if you're applying to jobs or internships, mention classes in your resume that are very relevant to the jobs that you're applying for. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say, for example, I'm applying for a data analyst role. I would, in my resume, I would include biostats class, my Python class, my Stata class, my SQL class, and I would just include all of those classes in my resume. Overall, for formatting, your dates and your location should be aligned to the right side margin, and then your role and your company should be aligned to the left side of the margin. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how it should look. I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, at least I've seen that their alignment is sometimes off. Their formatting is sometimes off, but you want to make sure that your alignment and formatting is correct, because when it gets parsed onto job application systems, you don't want any parsing issues,
Right.
which would lead to you automatically getting rejected from that job role. And then, yeah, so in your education section, you have the schools, and then right under that, in your work experience section, you can include any internships that you did, paid, unpaid. If you're a founder of a company, if you have a side hustle, include all of
Mm-hmm.
that in your work experience. It doesn't have to be big names. As students, I think we
Yeah.
all, have, I mean, I did so much unpaid work experience. I included all of that in your
Mm-hmm.
resume, in my resume. Also, for most industries, I will say if you're not in research, a resume should standard be 1 page long. So make sure that it is 1 page long, and definitely not 3 or 4 pages long, especially if you're just a student and you're
Right.
not entering the research side of things. I think for research side of things, I think things work a little bit differently because you can have a longer resume. Your bullet points can be more detailed. You can really talk about the experiment slash work that you're doing. So yeah, so education, work experience. Under that, you can have a volunteer or leadership experience. Like every college has so many clubs that you're part of. So which clubs are you part of? Are you leaders in any of them? Are you part of any societies? I was handling Imperial College's social media accounts. I mentioned that there. I also mentioned that I was actually doing podcasts with this company called Thea Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mentioned that also, that I do podcasts with like industry thought leaders in the healthcare industry. But I don't do that anymore. I did that as a student. And then under that, you can include any skills Like, for example, if you have any coding skills like Stata, Python, R, or you can include any interests that you have, any certificates that you have. And the last part is kind of just like maybe 4 to 5 bullet points of skills, interests, languages, certificates, like that. And so just very like concise, very detailed. I will say for your resume, just make sure that there's not too much white space because you want to be a bit detailed with your bullet points. You want to include numbers there if you can. Like if you worked on a clinical study, how many patients were in your sample? If you were in consulting, for example, maybe talk about in numbers in like increase in revenue, percentage increases. Just try to be as detailed as you could be so that when a recruiter reads your resume, they know exactly what they're reading and it doesn't sound like all fluff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense. And would you like one thing I was might change is maybe having the education section later and having the projects or the work ex before. Would that work? Like, would that be much more?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Honestly, I think either is fine. It doesn't, yeah, honestly, I think either is fine. I think for me, personal preference was education at the top was because my work experience, I didn't have any really big names. Like, for example, I didn't have like Deloitte or HSBC. For me, my work experience, a lot of it was unpaid also. So I was like, it really depends on you. Like, I wanted my education to stand out. I wanted Weill Cornell Medicine and Imperial College to stand out because then that would be the first thing that they look at, and then my work experience after. But definitely, if you have strong work experience or if you've done a lot of internships, I think either
Mm-hmm.
like the way that you said, so work experience at the top and then education at the bottom.
I think with the brand recall value, like for example, if your education has a good university name, then maybe that can be on the top. And as you said, if the internship is like
Exactly.
unpaid or not a Google or Microsoft, then maybe it could go in the second space.
Exactly.
Now there's very this subjective thing about the summary section. Most people prefer, most people don't prefer that. So what's your take on that and how should it be curated if at all it should be there on your resume?
Yeah, I think I have a very clear rule about the summary section, which I think a lot of my friends in IB/consulting tech followed. So if you're a student and you have less than 3 years of work experience, you should not include a summary section
Hmm.
because we have such little work experience that I don't think there's a need to summarize what you've done. You'd rather use that space for maybe having one or two more bullet points and being really detailed in those. I will say that if you are transitioning industries and you have a lot of work experience under your belt, it obviously makes sense to have a summary section because you're kind of explaining your career path and why you took this and then what led you to that next industry and now you're looking for another role. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think that was a rule that was there in consulting that I got from a consulting club that I was part of at Cornell. And so we had that rule. So I initially had a summary section and I deleted it after. But I think if you do decide to include a summary section, I think you could start off with like what your major is, what
Mm.
your school is, very briefly summarize your work experience. Like, for example, I worked at Google as a software engineer and I did XYZ. And then you could also include proficient in any coding languages that you're proficient in, or if you're more in the finance side, you could include like Excel, any other like any other financial tools that you've been using. But yeah,
Mhm.
basically a very brief summary of your entire career path.
Okay.
So I would say, yeah, I would say that.
Fair, 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 fair. But no, now that actually makes sense. The logic which I have given that if someone is less than 3 years of experience, then there's not much to summarize. So the word summary is because there's so much going on that you need to summarize. But if you have less than 3 years, then there's not much going on to summarize, right? Okay, makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think then we are good to move to the LinkedIn section. See, the thing is, like, I know the basics. Everyone right now is aware of the basic, like, have a good LinkedIn profile picture, have a good LinkedIn banner, have a good title which mentions what you are trying to do. So I would really like, want your expertise upon about section or how should you use the other sections like the feature or if there's anything else to make your profile stand out because everyone has got that profile picture and the cover photo nailed it. So what's next?
Yeah, for sure. So I think in a lot of ways, your LinkedIn profile and your resume can be very similar, and that's completely fine. So in your about section, it's very similar to the summary section in your resume. So you basically just talk about your experiences, the school that you went to, and then you can also say I'm actively seeking for X roles in this industry, because what that will do is the more keywords that you have throughout your LinkedIn profile, the more it will stand out to recruiters. So it's basically SEO optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So you want to include keywords wherever you can. And then in your experience section, your bullet points can be very similar to your resume. I would say though that use your bullet points in your resume as a starting point, because in your LinkedIn profile, there's no word limit, there's no character limit. You can really go in detail about what you've done. So elaborate on that as much as you can. If you feel like you've done a good job in your resume, then I don't think there's any need to like add more unnecessary detail. But that's what I found in my LinkedIn profile, that I could actually expand on what I did, the impact that I had. And then also you want to include any certifications that you did in your LinkedIn profile, any online courses. A lot of people don't know this, but LinkedIn also has a recommendation section where you can ask any ex professors, ex managers to give you a 1 to 2 sentence recommendation. And that's like, it takes less than maybe 5 minutes, and it's something that adds so much to your profile. You can also ask your peers at your college, like, can you give me like a 1 to 2 sentence recommendation, because it just adds credibility to your profile. I will say, I think you said it perfectly. Like, have a good LinkedIn profile photo. Go like in the summary section, really talk about what you've done. Again, like your summary section in your resume, experience section, you can go more detail in your bullet points. Yeah, add anything that you've done outside of the classroom. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, add links to everything. If you have an online portfolio, add a link to that. If a maybe website featured you, like whether that's a biomed magazine, whether that's a company website featuring you, include all of those links in your resume also, in your LinkedIn profile also.
Okay.
Sorry.
Got it. No, it's fine. Okay, makes sense. And I think you have covered most of the things, and the recommendation is highly necessary, because if a recruiter or someone walks on your profile and then they see that, oh, this person has recommended someone, that Harshvi had worked in this particular domain or on this particular project and she did a fab job, then I think that's a testament that, okay, yeah, she is, I mean, a better candidate. And yeah, I think that's it how it works.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Like now with the networking, since like start of this conversation as well. Oh, I think yeah. Since like start of this conversation as well, like you mentioned about the networking, the referrals, and I personally believe in that, because every opportunity which I've received so far, was it be it a internship opportunity, be it a job application, a full-time job, or any interview which I have given so far, was through a referral or through a networking event, like could be a meetup or something, or I met the person in person at an event. So that is really, I mean, most crucial thing. If you know someone and then they can just open the door for you for the interview, that's like the best. But there's always this thing going on, what should I write, how should I approach it? And as you said, like you were awkward in the first few conversation, first few coffee chats. How to tackle with them, with maybe like having some few questions already prepared on back of your mind, so that you can not feel lost, or what should I ask, what should I reply, or something like that. So let's talk about that.
Definitely. I think that's such a important aspect to touch on also, because it's such a misconception, or it's something that's I think has a lot of mystery, because I honestly didn't know like how to ask for a referral. I kept hearing these buzzwords around me, and I'm like, how do I actually do this? So I think just to give the listener a really clear breakdown what you want to do, I think the worst possible thing you can do is literally just reach out to someone and be like, hey, this is my background, will you be willing to refer me? Because I get messages like those, and I'm just thinking to myself, why would I want to refer this person? What would I get out of it? I don't know
Mm,
anything about them. I don't even know which school they went to, where they're from. Sometimes I don't even know like what their work experience is. And so you want to avoid doing that at
mm,
all costs. What you want to do is essentially, let's say I am applying for a role at Microsoft. So I submit my job application, or it can also be the other way. For example, a lot of data analyst roles work in the sense they give you a unique link to actually apply to that job. So it depends. Yeah. So it's the same strategy that you would use. It just depends whether you're doing it before submitting your application or after
mm,
submitting your application. So
mm,
what you want to do is yeah, let's say I'm applying to a role at Microsoft, then I go on LinkedIn, I look up Microsoft software engineers, NYC, if that's the city that I'm looking for. I reach out to maybe what I did, and I also want to hear what you did and what
Hmm.
you think of this number. But what I did is, if it's a big company, I reached out to around 20 to 25 people
Hmm.
from each company, and I send them a very introductory message like, hey, as a current master student at Cornell Medicine, I would love to know more about your experience at Microsoft. Would you have some time and your role at Microsoft? Would you have some time to connect maybe this week or next week? I think with that really basic standard introductory message, you get a pretty good response rate. Unless I think if you're in a very, very competitive industry like investment banking, then your numbers probably
Hmm.
have to be higher. But I will say that overall in the healthcare slash consulting industry, everyone was really willing to connect, willing to talk about the experience, and had a really good experience with actually talking to these people.
Hmm.
So you send that message, hopefully they reply. After they reply, you can say something like, yeah, when's a good time for you guys? Schedule a chat. And then either it's a Zoom meeting or a phone call, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you prepare questions beforehand. And I think none of those questions should be, can you refer me? Because it just sets such a a bad impression. You're talking to someone for the first time, and it kind of sounds very transactional when you see networking like that, when all you're trying to do is get a referral. Think of it as a way for you to get to know the company more and for the company slash the employee to get to know you more. So look at that person's LinkedIn profile. Was there something that they did that stood out to you? Was there something that in their experience section that you want to know more about? Did they go to the same school as you? Do they have the same interests as you? And you want to touch on all of those points in your informational interview, is what they call it. So you can ask them like, these are just some questions that I asked. Like, could you tell me a little bit more about the projects that you're working on? Could you tell me a little bit more about the day-to-day responsibilities? Do you have any advice for me? Don't forget to talk about yourself. And instead of just rushing through the conversation and making it sound more of a script, ask follow-up questions. Because
Hmm.
they like, now that I'm on the other side, when someone is genuinely listening to me and asking follow-up questions, that makes such a big difference. Like if I have a good conversation with them, I'm so much more willing to refer them rather than someone that just messages me like, hey, can you refer me? And after you have that conversation, you can always ask like, hey, it was really good speaking with you. I really liked something very specific. Like I really liked the project X that you were working on because that's something that I align with because of my previous experience at XYZ. I'm really interested in this role. Then you insert your job ID or like the link or whatever and be like, would you be willing to refer me?
Okay.
Hopefully they say yes. If they say no, you can always say, um, okay, thanks for your time. It was still great talking to you. Do you think you'd be able to connect me with anyone else from the team? Because I'd just love to show my interest in the company.
Okay. I think that's a solid one. Rather than just directly asking, hey, can you give me a referral and here's my resume? Because even I get those and I'm straight away like, no. I mean, I don't know anything about you. Like, why would I? Right. Okay.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Makes
And
sense.
yeah, I wanted to ask, what did you think about the number 20 reaching out to 20 to 25 people? How did you do it?
No, that's spot on. Like, so with the number, like it can be 10, 20, 15, whatever. What I used to do is, let's say I'm applying for a data analysis role. So I used to find out people who are at a senior position as a data analyst or a data engineer or in the data department, which is like could be data scientist or either of those. So I used to find out like the senior managers, and let's say there are like 5 or 10, because again, if you filter down with your location, there won't be like hundred or thousands of them considering the geography here. So I used to like send all of them the connection request, and because it was not a premium, so I had to wait until they accept the connection request. And as soon as they did, I used to send a text saying, hey, like I saw you're working on this project. Or usually what I used to do is like go back on their work experience and see what project they did, or if they wrote a book or something, like because these are guys are like senior level or like big people, so they usually maybe have written a book or published a paper or something like that. Just pull that up and say, I'm learning about this, would you be willing to have a conversation about it, because I would really like to know how this technology works, and if I want to learn, it would be best if someone from the industry who has hands-on experience would lay a roadmap for me. So that was the way
Exactly.
I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's perfect also. Exactly.
Again, like there are two ways. First is this, and the second is like, even with the podcast, like the way I approach you, I saw your reel, and then I genuinely, it's not all, it's not that I have to cold DM this, then there's a template or something. It has to be very hyper personalized. Like,
Exactly.
so I'm not sure like how that cold DM, like how was your response to that cold DM? But what I was thinking is, because see, this is what happened, I'll just portray that, and then what I want is what I will, portray in the second paragraph. That's all. That was the thought process behind it.
Definitely. I think exactly like you said, it has to be hyper personalized. It has to be specific to that person. I could just tell, like, by even the DM that you said, that you actually like took time to like look at my profile and see what you're doing. And thank you so much for reaching out, because like it turned out to this. So I think that's very helpful. We posted a video, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about a template that
Mm-hmm.
I used for cold DMing people, and then I got a few responses that said, "Oh, this sounds chat GPT," but I'm like, because I inserted brackets saying insert
Ah,
something specific about the role, and they're like, "Oh, this sounds kind of chat GPT than vague," and I'm like, no, the point I'm trying to get across is that it has to be so precise that I physically cannot tell you what to say,
yeah,
because it depends on who you're reaching out to. And I think that's, yeah, one thing that I just wanted to clarify.
yeah, yeah. No, for those comments, it's just the reply would be good luck thinking that I will get my way through these referrals, and you just keep thinking it's ChatGPT. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. See, most of them don't even reply. In few cases, or most of the cases, it might happen that you won't get a reply. So, do you prefer following up? And if yes, then after how long and how many number of follow-up?
Yeah, that's a very valid question. I would say that I guess if they don't reply in 1 week, I think you can follow up with them once, maybe
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Hey, kindly following up on this message," because sometimes your email can genuinely just get lost in like the
Right.
thousands of emails people get. So maybe you should just follow up once, maybe after a week. I feel like that's a good number, but I don't think you should follow up once after that, because it definitely shows that you're proactive, but it can rub the person off the wrong way if I guess, you're too pushy on them.
Right. Okay. I mean, they can then sense, okay, this is a transactional thing and they want something out of it. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Exactly.
Once a week, it's fine. Okay. Fair. Coming to the interviews preparation, and so now you have done about consulting and kind of a bit of analysis. So, how should one prepare for the interviews? And so, there are two questions. How should one prepare for the interviews in terms of body language and in terms of the actual answers, or the knowledge, domain knowledge, or whatever?
Yeah. So there are two aspects to, I think, any interview that you're doing. There's one behavioral aspect, and then there's one technical aspect.
Mm.
And so for the technical round, it really just depends on your domain knowledge. Like if you're investment banking, how you're answering all of those in specific interview questions. If you're in consulting, how are you answering those case studies? Have you prepared enough for them? And that really depends on, I think that just takes practice, that just takes time. That's something you just have to do on your own. I would say that for behavioral questions, there are a lot of questions out there that will help you prepare for those. So, it's not as nerve-wracking as the technical ones, because in the technical ones, you can sometimes really not know what to expect. Like one of my questions in my consulting interview was, what's your favorite Excel question? Oh, what's your favorite Excel function? Which I could have never anticipated
Mm.
being asked that. I think just knowing, so those technicals, I don't think there's any way around it. You have to nail them. You have to be really good at those technical rounds, because that's ultimately what's going to lead you to that final interview. So in consulting, the way it works is that either your last round is your behavioral interview round, or sometimes in the first round, they can also ask you some behavioral interview questions. Just to clarify, behavioral interview questions are something that's maybe related to your personality. It's not anything related to the industry or role itself. It can just be, these are a couple of them. Like, tell me about your biggest failure. Tell me about your
Mm.
biggest accomplishments. What are your strengths slash weaknesses? And so I think there are a lot of ways that you can actually prepare for these behavioral interviews. In at Hire Me, we're actually coming out with a behavioral interview prep tool. Yeah, where you essentially just put your job role and the company name and your resume, and we give you tailored, personalized behavioral interview questions for
Mm.
you. And we also used a lot of questions that we were asked in our rounds through our friends. We also included all of those in the AI model, and then also just online questions that we've seen appear at specific companies. We include that in our tool also.
Okay, interesting. I think you guys are rolling out the interview and the resume model, because I'm on the wait list for both. but whatever you have done with the LinkedIn, I mean, I'm just it's just awesome. Like, if anyone has a basic profile, they can just sign in with their LinkedIn account, and then it also shows the before after, like what was before and then what was changed after. So amazing. And also the feedback which was provided with the hover, like if you hover and then it shows a keynote
Mm-hmm.
or something like that pop up. So that was brilliant. Like, okay, if you don't like this, but here's what the format is, so just you can curate it yourself or take it to ChatGPT or whatever tool you want to use. So that's really interesting. And to anyone who is planning to, who thinks that their LinkedIn, their resume, or they want to get prepared for their interview rounds, would definitely recommend using this tool. The link would be in the description. The website would be in the description. And I know that you also do one-on-one. So if anyone wants to talk to you, I'll just put on the top mid link as well. So if anyone is interested, just go on the description and you can just click on either ways and connect with Harshvi and have a chat with her.
Thank you so much. That's so helpful. And thank you so much for the great feedback also. It's so great to hear.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the resume one because that could be really interesting to have a look at.
Yeah, definitely. We really want to perfect it. We really want to make sure that we're hitting every single point that we think is
Mm.
important to us, which is why it's taking us time to. We're three co-founders, and so we really want to make sure that, sorry, we really want to make sure that the value that we're providing is something that's truly top notch and is actually helpful. But hopefully, we'll be rolling out very, very soon.
Yeah, makes sense. So, like, how was your experience so far with the application, and then how did you land up with this idea of creating some product?
For sure. So I think everything we spoke about today just shows how many misconceptions
Mm.
there are in the job search, how many clarifications that I wanted to get, that you wanted to get, how many questions we had. And all three of us realized that there was really an unmet need in the job search. It's overwhelming, it's daunting. Sometimes your career services don't really help you that much. If you don't have maybe an older sibling leading you, if you don't have older friends leading you, it can be a very scary process. And that's
Mm.
something that we realized. And so we really want to democratize access throughout all universities, no matter what college you go to, no matter what your background is. We wanted everyone to have the same level of access, same access to resources that we had, because we were fortunate enough to go to colleges like Cornell or Carnegie Mellon. And so we struggled in our job search initially, definitely. And when we were on the other side of the job search, when we actually landed those jobs, we were
Mm.
like, there's so much that can be improved here, which led us to identifying pain points that we had in our job search. So that's optimizing your LinkedIn profile. Doing it manually was annoying. Updating your resume constantly was annoying. It's so nervous to be scared before your interviews, which everyone goes through that. But we really want to find a way to see how we can improve a lot of aspects in the job search. So interviewing, asking for referral, networking
Mm.
templates, building your resume, optimizing your LinkedIn profile. And so it's really targeted for students. If you're an undergrad slash master student or early career professional, I think
Mhm.
the tools give you a really basic, really useful standard point that you can use, and then you can go above and beyond that to hyper
Right.
personalize your application. And I think the interview tool is so useful when you're actually getting those interviews and you want to prepare with, you want to see how you speak on
Mm.
call, on camera. You want to
Mm.
see if you're speaking too fast, too slow, if the content that you're saying actually makes sense, because we are giving a feedback to the user.
Right.
Um,
Okay, interesting. Nice. And I think with the AI development, that would be much more easier so that, I mean, you can have a agent or something like Siri or ChatGPT if you turn on the voice note, something like that inbuilt, and then that could just, ask you question like, hey, Tanmay, tell me about this thing, and then you answer, and then it gives you feedback. Okay, you know what? This went well, but here's how you can improve. One, two, three. That's interesting. Interesting, really.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what we're aiming for.
looking forward to use those other two tools. But I think that's pretty much it. And thank you so much for having this conversation and giving your insights about moving to the big like UK and then US, your journey, how you landed a job, and then what one should be looking out for their resume or LinkedIn or networking referral. And the key insight where like you're not making it sound transactional is was really interesting. And the justification for not having a summary section, because this was the subjective question which I used to ask everywhere and to anyone sorry, to everyone, that what do you think about it. But the answer which was like, it's a summary. If you don't have an experience that big, what would you summarize? Was the best. And I think now I'm satisfied with the answer, and the quest has finally ended that should one have a summary section or not. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, do you have any questions?
Thank you so much. It was so nice speaking with you. It was so nice learning about your experience also moving to Ireland. I think what you're doing is great. And I looked through some of your videos and I think they're genuinely so helpful for anyone who's looking to move abroad. So yeah, thank you so much for actually taking the time to share all of this content because I can only imagine how long and tedious it must be to edit all of your videos, to come up with all of that, to actually take the time and effort to talk to people and post all this to ultimately help other people in their moving abroad journey slash job search journey. I think it's really great what you're doing. So thank you so much for hosting me on this.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we'll chat to you and we'll let you know how the whoop goes on.
Oh yeah,
But yeah,
for
we
sure.
will be in touch. Thanks.
Thank you. I hope you have a great weekend.
You too. Have a nice one.
Bye.